Hello, welcome to the Loney Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Loney. Originally, I was going to have regulars on, but I realized that this is the usual time they're going to have Twitter Spaces on, where they discuss about finances, digital currency, and some old guy, but that's besides the point. As for our guest, he's from Italy, currently in Tokyo, Japan. He is a data scientist building MVP that uses GPT-3. I swear that sounds familiar. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Michelangiolo Mazzecchi.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure coming here today. So I'm currently in Tokyo. It's 4:25 in the morning, so early morning, and that's how I usually start my day. And
Okay,
today, if perhaps we could have a small conversation on how GPT-3 now is playing a role in perhaps in the space of data science, which has rocked the world, we could say, and also how it could be used for building useful MVP in a very short amount of time.
okay, go right ahead.
So, well, as you know, a few months ago, in reality, GPT-3, at least the version, the first version was the 3.0. It was released more than a year ago, and people find it revolutionary, but at the same time it was not used so much. So as we know, after a while they had the idea to come up with ChatGPT 3, which is a model trained on GPT-3. So you find like the brain. That's how Alex Friedman simply explained it. You have a brain, and then you create a model on top of that. And people, were so amazed by this technology that then they also started using GPT-3 in production. And so what I found out, especially in the past few weeks, actually started last month, I started using the model, and I said, look, there are so many cool things and use cases that can be done that are not even listed. Usually developers are starting to understand what are the most useful use cases for GPT-3. And from an engineering perspective, it really offers um, a, a way to mediate the complexity between a very complex engineer problem like an API and a text interface. And what it means is that before, for example, when you had to code an application, for example, these one of the use cases, when you had to code an application, like it was really, it was limiting. You had to interface with another API. For example, let's say you want to buy a product on Amazon. Okay, you have to use either the Amazon interface, but then let's say you could even build something on top of that. And to build something on top of an existing product, you use an API. For example, I could build something that interacts with Shopify, even though it's not a Shopify website directly, using their API or Twitter or whatever. Now, of course, the way to communicate with that is extremely limiting, because of course you need to input parameters. So the user, basically the interface you have to create for the user, it's how to say, needs to have a lot of buttons, needs to have a lot of parameters, and it really depends. Now with GPT-3 and use, for example, you can actually allow the user just to input plain text, and then with a proper prompt, you can actually interact with this API. And what it means is that now you can actually build products via interfaces, your own products that allow users just to input plain text, and then you can interact with everything you want in the regular way. So this is I found this like quite revolutionary, because everybody right now can have access to this technology. It's a sort of democratization, though GPT-3 is not open source, but still it's made so available that now we are going to see a new wave of startups and companies that actually use this technology. And if you see Product Hunt, for example, they are full of startups that actually are just focused on NLP and GPT-3 specifically.
Okay,
Mm,
interesting.
And of course, please.
Okay, I just
And of
want to
course,
ask you.
no, I'm sorry, there is a delay from Tokyo, but please keep going.
Okay, I'm going to ask you. I want to ask you something about GPT-3 and ChatGPT. Are do those two have like any similarities or
Similarity.
differences? Yeah.
Well, GPT-3, yeah. So GPT-3 is the biggest model. Now it's reached version 3.5. The most advanced model is called Da Vinci version 3, which is absolutely stunning. It's really, it's an improvement compared to the previous generation. So the GPT-3 is the original model. Now, Chat GPT-3, there are two, let's say, main differences. So Chat GPT-3 is not as smart. It looks smarter, but it's not as smart as GPT-3. And it is specifically been trained to like interact with a user, and the architecture is different, the models are comparatively different, and it's been used like reinforcement learning to train that. And so the use cases, let's say, are different. And there is also another big difference, which is the API. So now the issue, let's say, the current limitation of ChatGPT 3 is that it can only be used as an interface. So, for example, like you cannot use ChatGPT 3 in a product yet because it has no API. The only way to do it is you have to connect with your own computer, and you have to write your own you have to write your own prompt. And that sounds wonderful if you are one user, but if you are a company, how you cannot use that unless, of course, you use it internally, but you cannot add it to your product. GPT-3 instead, it's available through an API, which means I can take GPT-3 and I can put it in my product. Or more correctly, I would say that once I build a product, I can send data to the servers of OpenAI, and then GPT-3 is used. So in terms of startups and building a product, the only choice for now is actually GPT-3. And
Fabulous.
so, well, yeah. So I would say that the interesting thing about this, I think there are two facts about it, two supporting fact about it. First of all, it's very surprising how now communities, are starting to experiment with technology to find use cases. What it means is that this technology is starting to become so, I wouldn't say it's not only complex, because mostly is a black box. It's very difficult to understand what's going on and why the model makes those kind of decisions. This is called transparency in machine learning. So, for example, if the model is biased, and all the models are biased, you would like to know, okay, why is the model like this? Why is the model making such a decision? And for easier model, it's very simple to detect that, even for maybe computer vision. But with these models, it's very difficult to understand the underlying complexity. So you do not know what's going on. Sometimes you do not know why the model either crash in the sense gives a wrong or even a biased output. And the other thing is that the community is finding very, very innovative way that to use it. And that is not something that can be easily, it's never happened before. It is something very recent, because before you release the model, the engineers were experimenting with it and knew the limitation, and they were coming up with the use cases. You can do this, you can do that. But we've seen, for example, you made it available to a community, and now the community experiment with it until like new, very, very, very curious and very unexpected use cases come out of it, and they become popular, and those are the use cases where, for example, that's outlined where you can find more opportunities, for example, for development. I give you an example. Have you ever heard perhaps of Midjourney?
Possibly.
So Midjourney AI, or like DALI 2, they are models that you can input text, and it will create art, AI art. And AI art right now, as you've seen, for example, Twitter or Instagram, is really becoming a thing. Now, of course, there are debates whether that is copyright, whether that is legal or not. I'm not getting into that territory. But AI art is definitely something worth exploring. And to make AI art, basically, people have to input a piece of text. and those texts serve as instruction. So, for example, if you want a beautiful sunset, you can write, okay, beautiful sunset, and then how to say, in the summer, green theme or yellow theme in the style of this artist. This is called a prompt, which is the instruction you give the model. And Midjourney is really very good at making this. You can make masterpieces. It's actually a Discord bot, and you can use Midjourney for this use case. And it's really, you can make real masterpieces. But what was difficult, I thought a few months ago, you had to come up with a prompt. And you could write beautiful sunset, but if you had something very specific, you wanted something very specific, you had to come up with a very elaborate sentence. And we are talking about like 2-3 paragraphs altogether that describe the output. And people were constantly experimenting with the model, making something way more complex all the time to create the prompts, to create results that were perfect, or they were tuned in a particular way. A use case which really I find astonishing with ChatGPT 3 is that people, instead of writing complex prompt, trying to write complex prompt for Midjourney, so there were only a few people who write so much and knew how to use the model. You can use ChatGPT 3 to write the prompt for you. So, for example, I say, write a very elaborate prompt for a sunset that has this characteristic with with a sun that is like Saturn, which spins around the Earth and is red. Okay, and then Midjourney, for the ChatGPT 3, will create a prompt which is way more complex, and then you can use the prompt to in Midjourney to create a very sophisticated art. So you can use basically the users, the community have invented a pipeline that takes ChatGPT 3 and Midjourney as the two main elements. And that is a new use cases you find. So I think right now what we are witnessing is this, people are coming up with their own use cases. And then in a short time, we will have two quite revolutionary elements, let's say, that characterize this new AI. First of all, people will come up with a taxonomy to classify all the use cases. So large language models and communication with large language models, specifically prompt engineering, will become a standalone subject. Like SEO, for example. They are SEO expert, but 5 years ago, they weren't so popular. About 3 years ago, if I recall, there were people who this really became a job and became the SEO expert who come into companies or do marketing. And you can take an article and make sure that your article is ranked on top of Google, and they can manage your content, etc., etc. So very soon there will be people who actually do this as a job. They're called prompt engineers. So their work is becoming expert at knowing how to interact with large language models. And also the community will define this taxonomy that I was talking about, all the possible use cases in every single subject. So the subject will keep expanding until there will not be one single person who can know all the subject. There will be different specialized individuals who can use large language models to basically be able to control them. And we are looking at this will start in about 6 months. In about, I would say, 1 year, the work of prompt engineer will become like notorious. In about 1 year and a half, maybe 2, we will be seeing the expansion of prompt engineering from a single individual to many to different for people who specialize in different areas. So I would say that these are very interesting fact on the future, let's say, of GPT-3, because it's really opening door to a new era of technology. Perhaps do you have any hints or question? Where would you like to direct the conversation?
Actually, yes, I do. What are your thoughts or predictions for the next 10 or 20 years in terms of AI computers and so on? What do you think is
Wow.
the
Wow.
future of AI?
Right. Wow. That is, look, my prediction. And like, I am not even, I would say I'm not even an expert in, because the thing is, one thing is, there are two elements concerning AI. One is the hardware and one is the software. Because with the software you have more elaborate models, okay, and so there are models who can do more extraordinary things. And the other one is the hardware. The more computing power we have at our availability, then the more those we can expand those models. Now we just reach a point. Now it's like 10-20 years is impossible. I think, like, I could barely, and maybe barely, predicted if I prediction is a good word. I would say estimate or infer the next 3 years, maybe. After that is a black hole for everyone, because nobody has seen such an unprecedented growth in technology. We have done more in the past 7 months than in the last 100 years, probably. And we keep just revolution, like a new revolution now is coming every maybe 3 6 months. For example, I've been talking about AI art, and so far the most incredible model was called diffusion. Before they were GAN, so they were neural networks who could create their own art, let's say, or generate a material. And then diffusion came, stable diffusion. And then after stable diffusion, sorry, is the model. Diffusion is the technique, is a sort of architecture. And then right now, something on top of that, which is called control nets, which is a new revolutionary area in AI art, just came out of like a few weeks ago. So right now we can wake up in a few weeks, I'm quite sure, and we can see a new thing that nobody anticipated. Because we are really starting, I would say it like this, we are really starting an AI race right now. AI was kind of good, but it was not, nobody actually knew what AI was used for. If I go to, for example, I came in here in Tokyo, and I went to events, to find leads, to make networking, and nobody knew what AI could be used for. Rightfully, because it's complex. I mean, it is not something which is well known. With ChatGPT 3 now, people are actually realizing, because they have hands-on with AI, and this is really a great opportunity for companies who are working in the field, like mine. This is called Goliath AI Consulting, for example, that to actually get into the field and people understand what I'm doing. It really makes a difference from a networking standpoint. But sorry, except for, I apologize for that branch. So first of all, yes, there are people who understand the importance of AI, which means the race is going to accelerate. The second point is the use of large language models. Because what happens, before, companies were kind of shattered. There was this world of individual models, and each company had their own model. But now we've seen that a large language model really make a difference. And a large language model is something which is, it's a model, it's an AI that is being trained by a very big company. It requires millions to train. I recall, like, GPT-3 required 12 millions to make, which is relatively small. And so you have to make a very big model. But this model can do way more than any open source, any alternative on the market. And so what we are probably witnessing right now is the transition between each company having their own model, from a way to, like, having a market where big companies have their own, they offer their own very large language models, and people use that. And so, the technology is becoming more advanced, but, also more, the leaders of the technology are, they have always been the big tech, but with large language models, their power, let's say, their influence is going to increase, because they are the only one who can provide those larger language models. Now, there are also alternatives. For example, there is an alternative to GPT-3, which is called Bloom. And you can download it for free, and you can use it for free and change the code. But of course, it apparently is not as powerful as GPT-3. And so the prediction that we see, and mostly, I think, if you go, like, if you research the CEO of Stability AI, he really gave a pretty good idea of what's coming. And I think, for example, the next big thing we are going to see are an enhancement of AI art. We're going to see many models that can, first of all, will revolutionize fashion. Fashion, let's say, we can be completely automated, like art. Because fashion before required models. Now you can take, now of course there will not be the need of replacing actual model, but for smaller companies that will likely be a necessity. You cannot afford to hire a model and do the shooting, etc., etc. So you can have, like, for example, an AI generated model which already exists, and you cannot find the difference between a real one. And then, for example, once a company design products, you can actually apply to the same generated model, generated fashion model. So, for example, the areas of computer vision and AI art will really be revolutionized. NLP, they will push it even further, and they will start a competition between models. And another thing we will likely see, and this really is out of our comprehension, it's generated the videos. So if the model, probably the model, you're already starting, like the model already allowed to make something rudimentary, but you could actually take, for example, you can actually generate your own. Let's say, have you seen, let's say, the animated movie Spider-Man? You can
Yeah.
actually well, you can in very a few years you can create your own movie with generated voices, and you could actually recreate an entire movie just with prompts. And later on, who knows, maybe we can even replace like real actors with this. I'm looking at the time, probably maybe 5-10 years, depending on the computational power, because these are very heavy, but it's quite extraordinary to think about. And for example, there is a underline this. There is I think it's called in painting. There is another technology, for example, that will be able to replace Photoshop. Because what happens now is not that we don't have the tools, let's say, to replace Photoshop. The tools, I mean, there isn't a model capable of doing that, but there is something else. There is the underlying technology that is able to do that. Which means is you find a model which is very rudimentary, and let's say that you can edit a photo, okay, like Photoshop, but just writing what you want. You want a window in the back, okay, just write, I want to replace the background with a window. You want to, how to say, make hair of a different color, okay, and you just write, make the hair of a different color. This is called in painting, is a model which you can find on Hugging Face for free, actually. But that is not an advanced model. That's is essentially the underlying technology. But there will eventually be one company who will invest millions or tens of millions to make a software based on this underlying technology, which is so advanced that will be able to compete initially with a software like Photoshop, and then later on replace it. So we are looking at just increase and spawn of use cases in every single direction from 5 to 10 years right now. More than 10 years, I cannot even fathom. I cannot even I cannot even predict it.
Okay, fair enough. I can see where you're coming from with how technology is progressing as the months go by. It's yeah, that's understandable. I can see how technology can certainly make a change in the future, for sure.
I would say also another thing, because many people are very scared of replacement. And of course, there will be, this level of automation is unseen. We do not know what happens. But how I noticed something quite interesting, and in the last few months, is that even with ChatGPT, for example, I try to make my friends use it because it's very exciting. To me, it's like it's like looking at the first light bulb from my perspective, though I didn't create it, unfortunately, but it was kind of a discovery. And I convinced some of my friends to use it. And I saw, for example, that the majority of the people I know even have heard about it, or they've seen how it works. They do not use it. And I think this really is what is going to play a big role in the future. It's not this, perhaps, that the model is going to replace people. That eventually, yes, but is that among the people who will need to update their work, there will only be a percentage of them, let's say 10% or even 5%, who will actually want to use the new model. 95%, for example, will keep doing their job as how to say, with their usual routine. I mean, this is not a technology that everyone finds exciting, which I understand. So my suggestion is, right now we are seeing a trend, let's say, that the people who can actually gain more of this revolution, or at least stay on top of this revolution, are the ones, not necessarily that are engineers, but are the people who can actually use this productively in their work. And this is not a big percentage. So if you push yourself, I would say, to use those tools right from the beginning, and to just be updated with the latest tools on the market, you have a very high chance of leveraging what is coming, rather than being a subject of a replacement, which nobody would like that.
Okay then, great.
But of course, I personally, I see the future as something in reality very positive. Any technological advance at the end will bring very positive results in all subjects, including medicine, for example. I haven't even touched it because I'm not an expert by any means, but I could foresee some interesting technologies that are also coming, that are also starting to rise in the field. So I'm very excited and very positive about the future. I also do know that the podcast usually is about 30 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have any final question, or do you way to close it?
I actually do have one more question. Uh, the question
Please.
is, how, what inspired you or encouraged you to get into data analytics or being a data scientist or getting yourself into like the technological sector?
Oh, that was very fun. I like to bake before. I like to cook, and at one point I wanted to push it to the next level, and I had the idea of converting recipes into algorithms. And that's how I just started coding for fun. And then I realized from that point, coding was really intuitive. I liked it a lot. You can do a lot with coding. And then, of course, I decided, okay, what else can I do with coding? I can do website. Okay, what else? I can do web app. Okay, what else? I can build this and that. And then I started looking to AI. Decided to give it a try. And it was something that, at least to me, it was something intuitive. It was something not only interesting, but it was something with a huge potential. And I decided to just focus my energy on the subject. And after that, after I actually started as a self-taught, and after like 1 year, I started to work for one of the big four, which is Ernst and Young. And after then I kept. I was hired by a startup, and I landed in Tokyo,
Oh,
and I opened my,
fabulous!
my own company there. Thank you.
Oh, that's been great. This was a great There was a great episode here, Michelangiolo, talking about the world of AI and progression of AI. And yeah, this has been one of the most constructive conversations I've had, well, ever actually, since I started this podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for hosting me.
Anytime. And until next time, stay tuned for more.